Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you're new to this channel, or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they're live, and there's also a PayPal link in the info box below the video once it's rendered. Most importantly, if you would like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by Sleeping Warrior and Ranty Flat Earth. How are you both doing?
Yo, yo. Doing good, thank you very much.
Excellent.
Yourself?
Before we do any housekeeping, I want to get straight onto your recent video about Greater Sapien, Ranty. Is that
okay?
Good by you?
That's pretty straight into it, isn't it, I suppose? Yeah, sure. Do you want me to share screens?
Yeah.
We can talk about it. Okay. Right, hide that, and yeah, ready to go when you are then.
Okie dokie. You're up.
Right, well, so this is Greater Sapien. Now, I only heard about this guy about a month ago, so I've been, pretty... Hello.
Hey, Jose. Good to have you.
Yes. Good morning. Thank you.
So yeah, I've only heard about this guy for about a month, so I don't know where he's come from. D-Marble seems to have a belief that he's become popular due to the videos that he uploads on the back of D-Marble. So he'll often put a lot of D-Marble's name in these videos and such like. And but this is his channel anyway, and he did a video last night, 18 hours ago, and it's called Twisted and Bent. I'm talking about the laser people. And in it, he basically says that he was goading D-Marble. That's why he made a reference to Brokeback Mountain and directed it to D-Marble, who responded, which is what he wanted. I think because it's the first time that he actually addressed him. But he was going to then try and prove that D-Marble's laser experiment was wrong, wasn't going to work, and he was going to do an experiment to show this. So I decided to look at this video, and as soon as I saw it, I realized what he thinks he's proving, and what he's actually not proving. We all know that refraction is a part of our world. It happens. The light does bend. You can get a focused beam and you can aim it at a prism, and the light will go into a different direction. So we all know that light can refract. So a beam of light can do that. What we have an issue with is terrestrial refraction, which is obviously the looming of buildings beyond the curvature of the Earth, which is what they tell us happens when they include standard refraction 76R. So here he is in his eagerness to debunk D-Marble. What he does is he has a tray full of ice, and he has a hot piece of iron or something like that that's been baking in the sun all day, so it's really hot. So he's got two temperature gradients, and what he will do is he will pull the cold ice in front of the laser beam, and you'll see that he's focusing in on this laser beam here, this red part here. So I'm just going to play some of the stuff, and you can see for yourself what happens to the laser beam when he actually pulls this this ice in front of it. And you will actually see that the laser beam does go down ever so slightly. The beam is being refracted ever so slightly. It gets refracted more when he actually pulls the hot iron thing in front of it. So we've got a change of medium that's going on, and that change of medium is causing this light to go up and come down.
Actually, technically not. No, it's the same medium. There's no change in medium. There's just change in the environment along the way. It's the same medium.
Well, what he's done is he's got this cold air that's been pushed in front of the laser beam, and then the laser beam carries on through that cold air to actually meet the warmer air, and that actually causes the difference.
Hey, chocolate.
What's up, guys?
You're right. But what I'm interested in is the board itself. Now, if you exchange the board and you look at the board, forget the light. We all know that a beam of light can be refracted. What we're going to look at is the ambient light that's being reflected back from this board. So when I say that, we're looking at this board. He's put these markers across, these lines that are going across the board, as you can see. And this is a solid, object that he's actually looking at. So if we thought that this was a building, let's just change it around and say that this board in the background is a building that he's shining this light on. When he moves the ice in front of the laser, we should also be getting the ambient light reflected through the same medium. So it'll be coming back and it'll be going through the medium of the ice or through the medium of the hot iron. And what we see is absolutely no change at all. So that kind of goes against their looming up beyond the curvature nonsense, because this is their argument. They say that entire buildings in all their entirety, not just a single stray beam of light, but entire buildings, towns, cities can be loomed up beyond the curvature of the Earth. What Greater Sapien is proving in this video right now is that isn't the case. The building, the wall in the back that we're looking at now, this ambient light that we're seeing that is actually being fed back towards the camera, so it's going through a medium change, should be moving. It should be going up and down the same as the light beam, but it's not.
Isn't he also demonstrating that light bends up as well as down, not just down?
Yes, when he puts this in front of this hot beam, this iron, the light does go up. The laser beam goes up. But
why don't we get told that?
Right, but can you see where the laser beam's gone up to there? It's gone up above.
Sure, but we only get told that light refracts downwards.
Exactly, yeah. But I've already done videos on that with Soundly's work showing that isn't the case.
Really?
However, Soundly, when he did his... Exactly. Well, anyway, look at the board, mate. Why is the board not moving? Why is the board staying stationary? Why is that not being refracted too? Just look, when he moves this board in front of this laser, we see the laser beam go up, but we're seeing the light from the board come back into the camera. So that's going through a medium change too. So why is that not moving? Why isn't that being lifted up? Because terrestrial refraction is nonsense, that's why.
Yeah, absolutely. The board is the equivalent of what you're taking a picture of, and you can see it, i.e. it's being taken a picture of with a camera at zoom. It's the equivalent of your building in the distance, is the board, not the very focused beam of light.
See, I've got 3 issues with this video. 1, he shows that when he puts the warmth underneath it, it bends light up. Now, according to Rumpus, it only ever bends down. 2, if... hang on, let me think. What was my other point? I've lost my other 2 points now. I should have written them down.
I can't help. I've got to stop you there. You're misrepresenting Rumpus. So I can't believe I've got to do this. No, he's not saying it only bends down. He's saying that in relation to the curved surface that it's travelling over, it's bending less in relation to the surface. So what you're calling up is just less down.
But what this guy's demonstrating is that the light bends up, not down.
I agree, but I'm just saying that when you said it in terms of Rumpus, by doing so you're misrepresenting his position. It doesn't change or alter the fact that the laser light is not representative of what Rumpus does talk about. He's saying the light that is coming from the buildings refracts around a presupposition of a sphere Earth at 7.6, the radius of that presupposed sphere Earth. So the buildings are equivalent to the board. And
but to be fair, Nathan, I'm only misrepresenting his statements if the statement that we live on a sphere is true. Because if we live on a plane, then it is
indeed. I'm not going to disagree with you. That's absolutely true. However, he doesn't think that, so I can't help but... I don't want to defend Rumpus here, Anthony, I assure you.
But one thing that is clear is that this is why the Globers don't do experiments. It's because they cannot make a building loom up from beyond a hill. or beyond the curvature of the Earth. And
Not
this
an
is
experiment.
this is the exact reason as to why that is the case, because yes, they can make a beam of light change direction. That is a physical thing that can be done. You can see that, it can be evidenced, you can do it yourself. But what you can't do is make a building loom up. Now, if you look at the board in the background and assume that is the building that we're trying to see beyond the curve, it should be moving as it goes through this temperature gradient as the light comes back into the camera lens. The only thing that's being affected is the beam, not the ambient light from the wall.
I wonder what his answer to that is. It's a fair point.
It's more than a fair point, it's a killer point.
I think it's a killer point.
Because where you've got things like Skunk Bay, and you're looking through atmosphere there, so you're looking at a huge distance, maybe 4, 5, 6 miles away in the distance, and you can see what would appear to be the mountain shimmering up and down. I'm going to say that that is just the atmosphere causing that effect. The good thing about this is he has such a small distance between the board and the camera that the atmosphere isn't having the chance to cause that shimmering effect. So this is a great experiment done over a very short distance, which shows a massive gradient change between freezing cold water, and the temperature, I believe, was 87 degrees. So there's a huge temperature differential here, yet the board in the background doesn't move at all. The only thing that changes is the beam of the light, not the board in the background. So whenever they say that things in the background are being loomed up, that's just nonsense. This experiment proves that. He essentially debunks his own model with this one experiment right now.
Awesome. Anything else to add to that, Ranty? If not,
No,
I'll
I
move
think
you off
that's
the
it.
screen. Cool. Thanks also to Greater Sapien.
Yeah, big thumbs up, mate. Thank you.
So, Anthony.
Yes, master.
Don't say that, God, please. Oh, I'm never going to hear the end of that.
That was the orc in Warcraft.
Warcraft.
Did you ever play the game Warcraft on the Amiga or the ST?
No, I thought it was Gollum.
It was like Command and Conquer, but it was the earlier version called Warcraft. And you had humans or orcs, and if you picked the orc campaign, you clicked on one of these green things that looked a bit like Shrek. The human would go, "Yes, sire," in a very human voice, but this click on the orc and they go, "Yes, master," in this really dopey accent. It was brilliant. I really enjoyed that game, but that was just what went through my head at that moment. Sorry.
That's all right. So, before we went on there, we were chatting away about one of your older hangouts off the back of yesterday's discussion about the molten iron core at the centre of presupposed spherical Earth.
Well, it was on the back of the distance to the sun argument.
Yes. But, sorry, yeah, I've got that the wrong way around. The distance to the sun conversation took you back in time to when you had a debate with Geo Strieber about the molten iron core. Is that the correct way around?
Yeah, let me just see how many is watching. 108, yeah, that's enough. That's enough to tell the story. Right, so yesterday's hangout, literally I was lay on the sofa just chilling whilst there was a conversation happening. And it was between James, was it? Jimbo?
Jimmy.
Jimmy. Jimmy comes on as this nonchalant swagger guy that thinks he's got all the answers to everything, but doesn't actually respond to very much. And he was talking with D Marble, and D Marble had said something about the distance to the sun. He said, "So where's that? Who measured the distance to the sun?" Now that's one of my favourite questions too, because for the longest of times I couldn't find out who did it, where the actual 93 million mile number came from. And weeks and weeks and weeks ago, I had contacted a prominent. I'll have to credit him. It was Jaren, and I asked him, "Where does the actual number come from?" And he told me. And I'd sat on it for weeks and weeks and weeks, and I kept asking it, waiting for somebody to mention that name. And thankfully, it happened yesterday. So if you listen back to the clip from yesterday, you literally hear me get up off the sofa. I didn't catch him say Christian Huygens. I didn't catch him say that because he said it quite muffled and quiet at the time. But when he said Cassini, that was when I pricked up my ears and paid attention. So you can hear me jump over to the mic and scramble for the mic. And I interrupted D Marble and I said, whoa, 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 what did you just say? And the guy said Huygens. And then we had the conversation, which I presented the document, which cited that Christian Huygens assumed that Venus was the same size as Earth. And on that basis, calculated the distance to the sun. Now, I knew this and I'd known this for weeks.
Hold on. Just repeat that one more time for the people who may not have recognised the deep significance of that sentence.
So Christian Huygens calculated the distance of 93 million miles to the sun based on the assumption or the presupposition that Venus is the same size as Earth. That's what he did. Now,
he had no proof to say what the size of Venus was, did he? None whatsoever. Yeah.
Let me just clarify what you've just said then. So what you're saying is this dude looks at a light in the sky and says, that light in the sky is the same size as Earth.
Yeah. So whatever size Earth is, assuming that he knew what the size of the Earth was, because there was some bloke with sticks in the ground. I mean, can you imagine if a flat earther did that? But anyway, some bloke with sticks in the ground had calculated the radius of the Earth, right? So he came to the conclusion that Venus was the size of the Earth, and on that basis calculated the rest of the solar system. Now, what's interesting is if you were to change that and you were to put Jupiter to be the same size, because let's be honest, Jupiter and Venus look pretty similar in the sky. There's not a lot of difference between the two of them. You can argue that it would totally change the scale of the rest of the solar system. So he's just picked a particular angle, and for some reason it seems to have been adopted and accepted as truth. Now, this is where I wanted that conversation to happen at some point, and obviously it happened yesterday. But what it made me then do was, I think the point was missed by Jimmy, because what it means is that I was right all those weeks ago when I got the heat for my statement, which was angular size is a sum, angle size is a measurement, because you need the distance or the actual size to be able to calculate how far away something is. You need one or the other. You need to either have the actual size to get the distance, or you need to have the distance to get the actual size. But to get the solar system, you've got to know at least one of the distances to one of the celestial bodies. And my issue was always, well, which one did they get? How did they get any of them? And what was the method that they used to measure it? Now, I didn't actually know that answer until recently. And obviously it happened on yesterday's show. But what that then led me to do was go over to a previous hangout where me and GeoStreamer, the liar, GeoStreamer, that was another comment, but we had a one-on-one. And it was all about this. Angular size is a sum. Angle size is a measurement. And it went on, and I listened very, very carefully to the precise phraseology that was being used. And it dawned on me that there's an issue there with GeoStreamer. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to share my screen, Nathan, if you present me, because I'm going to ask the help from the audience. I'm going to ask for help from the audience. What I want you all to do, if you don't mind, I want you to go and find GeoStreamer's channel. I want you to find the video that was angle size as a measurement, angular size as a sum with my name on it. And what I want you to do, I've obviously thumbed it down. It was December 2017, this. In this video, I heard something that was interesting. So what I've done is I've left a comment, and I don't know whether he'll see it or not because I've got him blocked at the minute, so I can't tell him. I want you to go and repeat the comment that I've put in there and ask him, was anybody feeding you information in the background? Because I want him to state his position. I don't want him to ignore it, so I want to raise awareness that he knows that people want to know his position. And basically re-ask this question. So I've asked the question. Ranty's also asked it. If I go to sort by newest first, you'll see that I've done it. You'll see that Nathan's done it. And you'll see that Ranty's also done it. So what I want to find out is, was anybody feeding information to GeoStreamer in this particular hangout? And hopefully by the end of the show, he'll have responded. So if you could go over there and repost that comment, I'll come back to this in the short term towards the end of the first show, or when I notice that he's responded, because we're calling him out. We're calling him out because the guy's telling pork pies again, and I'm going to expose it on this show the minute he responds. But to get awareness, we need to get enough comments or notifiers on his channel. So just go and re-ask that question. Was anybody feeding you information in the background? And the minute he responds, that's when I'll address it back in the show. And you're going to really enjoy this because you're going to see how sneaky these ballers are. And this ties in nicely with the Reds rhetoric thing with Nathan. Reds has called Nathan out, as it were, to an open hangout, so on a neutral channel. Nathan, do you want to take over?
Well, hang on just a minute. Can we get some clarity with this? You remember Geo? I remember back in those days because I was doing a lot of work with you at that time. And you told me, I remember specifically telling me that you was going to do one-on-ones. You were going to have one-on-one debates with Geo.
Yeah, all the hangouts I had with Geo were under the assumption that it was a one-on-one. It was me and Geo, and that was it. And most of the time, all the hangouts were presented that way. It seems like it's me and Geo and nobody else. But on this occasion, we need to raise awareness because I want him to state his position before I tell the rest of you what I've got to show you because it's brilliant. So we just need to raise awareness by getting them notified into his inbox so he knows that there's something there. Because I want him to state his position. I don't want him to ignore it, so I need a little bit of awareness for it and a little bit of momentum. And I want him to state whether he was on his own or not, or whether he had somebody feeding him information in the background. And once he commits to a position, it's golden. So
well, one thing's for sure. Probably by saying what you've said, I think everyone probably knows what sort of things we might have in store for him if he responds by saying that he was not being fed any information.
Yeah.
However. One thing I will say is that every time that we have ever done debates before, and we've heard this before, we have caught them doing it before. They say they will have one-on-one debates, and they are definitely being fed information in the background.
Of course, which is the reason why Red's Rhetoric wants Nathan to go out to a neutral channel, because there is no neutrality on a neutral channel. What happens is Red's Rhetoric and his friends will be in the background on TeamSpeak or something like that, and Reds will be getting fed info. And the minute Nathan brings something up to use against him in some way, 3 or 4 of them will be going. They'll go off like a starburst, and they'll go and try and seek information to discredit the source or discredit the information or counter the information. So you're actually fighting 4 or 5 of them. You're not fighting one on his own. But on this one occasion, yeah, you can all imagine what may or may not be resulting from when if he responds. But I want him to state his position because it's a test of his honesty, not a test of my evidence, because the evidence is glorious. The test is of his honesty. So if we can get him to state his position, that's what we're trying to achieve. It doesn't really matter what his answer is. Let's just get him to commit to a position, and then we'll address it towards the end of the show if we can get a response out of him. So go to his channel and give a good, nice comment for it.
What was the name of the video again so that people can find it? I believe it was in December of last year, was it?
Angle size. It's my quote. Angle size is a measurement. Angular size is a sum. They don't like it. So it was in December, just before Christmas, and it's probably one or two in December. So it's maybe 6-7 months ago. So if you're listening, GeoStreamer or GeoStreamer's friends, let's get your position stated, and let's get you commit to a position, and let's see whether you're telling the truth or not.
So essentially, this is like, how honest is it to have a one-on-one debate with somebody?
Well, at this point,
versus troll.
At this point, it's a question of how honest is GeoStreamer going to be. We'll come back to the hangout itself after he's stated his position, but for the minute, I just want him to state his position because he's blocked at the minute because he started to support Jeremy on that Children of Flat Earth thing. So I didn't agree with that. I think children should be kept out of this discussion for obvious reasons. But because he did that, I had to block him. And then because he got blocked, I don't know whether he'll see the comment or not. He should see the comment, but just need to raise a little bit of awareness for him and let's get him to state his position.
So when we call people baller trolls, we say that because we know the games that they play and how they always seem to do this ganging up on people. So whenever they give a position, they're always lying. They always say they'll do a one-on-one, and it never, ever is.
Well, I had my first 2 hangouts were with Red's Rhetoric. And the first time I went in there, I got the feeling that I was laying when you dig a grave and you have a rectangle in the floor, it felt like I was in that grave looking up, and there were all these eyes and noses peeping over the side, looking down on me. And that's how I felt. And then the second time I went in there, it dawned on me that he couldn't be doing this work all on his own because he had this information, the resources that he was relying on at his fingertips. And he couldn't possibly be doing that and debate me at the same time because you can't multitask. You can't specifically look for an article that helps your position and continue on the argument. You need to pause whilst you concentrate on what you're looking for. And he wasn't doing that. He was citing these things back at my fingertips. And I was like, So I suspected it right at the very start that these guys were being fed.
Hey, Spurs. How you doing?
Hello, it's me.
Hey, Jimmy.
Me.
How you doing?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, good to have you.
Okay, yes?
Hello, both.
Yeah, good to see you all.
So one thing you'll find with agents and trolls, shills, is the simple fact that they can't act like normal humans would do in a typical debate. So if you're out with your friends and you're talking about something, let's say you're talking about football or anything in general, you'll always reach a point where you can agree to disagree, or you will at least concede some things to their point of view. One thing that never ever happens with these guys that come into these debates, they never give an inch on anything, right? Ever, right? They don't act like normal human beings do. Normal human beings, you can have a discussion with. You can say, "Do you see that light over there? Do you see it's moved up 10 feet?" They'll argue and say, "How do you know it's 10 feet? What's to say it wasn't 10 millimeters?" You know, I mean, it's never a case of they can just talk to you normally. Right? And that is the clearest indication that they are trolls. And Jimmy, that's just come in now, is one of these.
That's not a very nice accusation, though.
Yeah, well, it's true, mate.
How come?
Because you don't act like a normal person would do.
Please explain me.
Sure, it's me, Andrew.
Hey,
I've
Travis.
just explained it. I've just said, if I said to you, that's red, I showed you an image that was of a red square, and I asked you, is that red? You would say it was black. Which is what you do.
Is that what I do?
Yeah, that's what you all do.
Okay.
If it involves agreeing with a flat earther, you do the opposite.
No, it's not true.
Yes, it is. Even now, you're disagreeing.
And can I also remind people that yesterday's hangout, when I actually presented the argument that the sun was 93 million miles based on Venus's perceived same size as Earth, or
you can go in if you want. I got to find my wallet.
You completely ignored that point and tried to gloss over it,
Yeah,
Jimmy, and it's a devastating point. And I wonder why you would do that when it was a killer move.
From 1672, was it?
Yeah. So that supports my argument, not yours.
Okay, if that's your assertion.
Well, back then, 1672, if you're citing it as that date, I can double check it if you want, but we'll accept the date for the sake of discussion.
Yeah.
If that's what they were being told back then, it explains an awful lot about why you morons exist now.
SX0, hello.
Hey, SX, how you doing? Can you hear us?
Hello.
So maybe we could discuss gravity.
Is that SX0?
No, it was me. I kicked myself accidentally.
Huh?
SX is just a dude, I think.
Say hello.
Yeah, I've been discussing gravity with the Globers and trying to find out, what is the cause, why things fall. And the question that they kind of asked, well, why don't they float in midair?
Density.
Well, I think it's a little bit more than density and buoyancy and all of those things. We were discussing the atmosphere, what it's made up of, what it comprises of. And we understood that there's lots of water in the atmosphere. It's like a solution, some type of fluid or solution, or some kind of it's an atmosphere. And my understanding of why things fall is because the atmosphere cannot attach or cling itself to the object. So if the atmosphere was like a sticky or a honey-based pattern, the objects obviously they wouldn't fall, they wouldn't move. So when an object is falling, it falls, it will fall down until it hits the ground. But if it hits water, it will obviously continue to fall, it will slow down, and it will hit another solution, which it will slow that descent, and it will just continue to do that until the solution that is underneath it causes it to come to a stop. So yeah, density and buoyancy has something to do with it, but the reason, I feel, why things don't just float is because they cannot attach to the atmosphere. Right? We don't have material that attaches itself to the atmosphere. So it's not just a case of density and buoyancy. Because they would say, well, why don't things float in the air?
Because of density. What are you talking about?
Yeah, what you just described is exactly density. I mean, that's all that there is to it. I'm listening
Yeah,
to
but
what you're saying.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is if you took that dense object and put it in an atmosphere that was very thick, it wouldn't fall like that. It
That's
wouldn't move.
density and volume. That's the same thing. You're just thickening the atmosphere. So if you want to call the atmosphere that we breathe water, for instance, just to use your example, that's the medium. That medium is not dense. Therefore, things are not going to float.
Not just float, but just stay there in midair, in one position. Not go up or not go down.
Well, that's the same thing that we've seen when Anthony showed the egg in the saline solution. I mean, that's all we're talking about. Even though I understand and I hear what you're saying, but as soon as you were finished, I was thinking that's still density.
Yeah, I mean, I think to a degree, but I mean, it moves. Why is it? To me, it seems like it's. But I mean,
Hi Neil,
it's
how
like
you doing? Can
it
you hear us?
moves.
Can you hear us, Neil? Hello.
Hello.
Hello, good to have you.
Oh, thanks for having us, Nathan.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
Carry on, Spurs.
Yeah. Yeah, density and buoyancy, those things, they play a factor. But why the object for me is not clinging to the atmosphere or it's moving, it's because for me it's sliding or slipping or sinking, just like over ice but vertically. Cannot attach itself to the atmosphere. But if we did have an atmosphere that was like that, it wouldn't move in the way that we see it now. But I don't think it's just density and buoyancy.
So if you don't think it's just density and buoyancy, you're in the same position as people like Arwin and Mark. What else do you think it is?
No. Hold on, sir.
Oh, what's going on? It's getting raided.
Run! Push!
No, I'm not in the same position now at all. I'm simply answering the question of why things don't just float in midair.
Density,
dude.
Because it's denser than the air.
because it's heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then again, like I said, if the atmosphere around it was able to stop it moving, then it would. It wouldn't matter the size of the object, would it?
But then it wouldn't move.
If
Then it
there's a
wouldn't move,
physical
right?
restraint.
Hold on
Correct.
a second.
It only moves until it hits the ground, and once it hits the ground's too dense for it to go through, so it sits there. Now the whole
Or
gravity
if it
thing
was
is there a force still pulling on that thing while it's sitting on the ground, other than the weight that it has, against the ground. That's
right.
the question. I guess.
Or it may hit water. If it's a leaf, it'll hit water and stop. But if it's something that's more dense than the water, it'll go through the water and carry on going down. It won't stop at the level of the earth, if you know what I mean. If you were holding a brick or whatever. But ultimately speaking, that would still potentially have a buoyant state at some point as it sinks. It would potentially stop sinking, just suspend in midair like you're describing with something that's definitely more dense than the air.
Yeah, it was just a thought. I was just looking at the reasons, because we move freely in this atmosphere. Things can move free as free fall. But yeah, I mean, I suppose that if that's what we're going with,
Spurs, that's not true, Spurs. Things can't move freely in the atmosphere.
well, we move freely in this atmosphere. Yeah, it's not difficult to move around.
No. We don't move freely. If we moved freely in the atmosphere, we would float in all directions freely, and we don't.
Well, if we didn't move freely, we wouldn't be able to walk, would we?
No,
Yeah,
you're
but we're
fighting.
using energy.
Your walking is the process of countering your own density, which is why lighter people run faster. Generally, you counter your own density with your muscles and your legs. But if you didn't do that, you'd just be lay on the floor.
You say people run faster because of what?
Generally, the lighter you are, the quicker you're able to move.
No, you run faster because you generate more power.
Sure, that's another factor, but generally speaking, the bigger somebody is, you can't sprint that fast. Trust me, I could do
No, but it
long
doesn't matter.
distance. I
That's
couldn't
the
do
point, though,
sprints.
isn't it? It doesn't matter if the power is there. Yeah,
No.
so if you can generate that power, you will be able to. to move.
Yeah, but so you don't think that the mass of the runner has got anything to do with the speed that they run at based on their power?
Well, I saw this article where this woman, she lifted a car which was 20 times her weight. And where did that force come from? Where did that power come from? How did she generate?
Yeah, it comes from her muscles, right? That's not my point. The point is that there is a correlation between the lightness of the runner and how fast they can run. Now, there are exceptions to the rule, and it is subject to the power of the legs that are doing the movement. But generally speaking, the lighter you are, the quicker you'll move. That's why whales swim dead slowly and dolphins are much quicker.
Okay, well, I mean, I kind of think it's a force that makes us move through this atmosphere.
Yeah, there has to be a force to make you move.
Right, so if you generate more force, you will move.
Correct.
Yeah. So we move freely according to how much force we can exert.
Not
right?
freely. We can only move laterally. We can't float. We can't fly. That's free movement.
No, we can't move. We can't fly, obviously, because our like I just said, our material, our skin does not attach to the atmosphere, right? So it's not made like that. But if it was,
you're confusing the ability to walk or run as moving freely, and it's not. Moving freely, the way you're describing it, would involve up and down as well as lateral.
no, we're just talking about what we know. We move freely in terms of going back and forward.
No,
To fly.
laterally only.
You move freely in the ISS, don't you?
So we are free to move, but we do not move freely.
Yeah, that's correct.
I mean, you could say you move freely, but try going outside during a hurricane or something.
Well, underwater, are you moving freely?
Yeah, but you were able to move in all directions.
You're not moving freely underwater.
Of course you are. Why are you not?
Because there's a resistance to what we're exerting more. Look, the point is when you exert a force, you shouldn't feel a strain if it's easy, right? But if you're exerting an excess force, then you will know about that. Exerting that force. So underwater, it's not that you're moving freely. You have to apply a force. It depends how you're defining it, right? So you're saying we can go up, down, left, right. To you, that's free movement.
Well, it is. Yeah, but I was contrasting your statement, which was we are free to move. We have free movement, and we don't. I was only using it to contrast your point about walking.
Yeah, and the only reason why we can't go up is because we cannot exert enough power.
No, because once you're detached from the ground, you've got no way to create the force to make you move.
That's my point. Yeah, like you cannot create enough power or force.
Not power. Once you're disconnected from the ground to push against, your density will bring you straight back down again. What goes up must come down, right?
Yeah, they would say that you're being pulled down.
Right. So identify the force of pull if it's not the density of your own mass.
Well, you're not being. That's not the reason why you can't get off the ground, is it? You're not being pulled to the ground. That's not the reason, is it?
What do you mean?
Anatomy.
We're
not birds. We don't have wings.
No, but the reason why we can't get off the ground is not because we're being pulled.
It's because you need something to counter your own mass. You need a force.
Or you would need a material so you can attach to the atmosphere and basically how you paddle up, climb up water. Obviously, yeah, we don't have technology to do that, but a coat or special paint, yeah, that's the only reason why. Because what you're trying to say is why we can't get off the ground. You're not very clear on that reason.
What do you mean? I'm as clear can be. The only thing that stops you from floating is your own mass. There is nothing else. If there was something else, then this is where the argument comes from. What is the additional force that's not your own mass? And they can't contrast against it. They can't distinguish density over gravity.
Oh yeah, let me just think about it. Yeah, I'll think about it. Yes.
Okay. So Arwen said he's going to cast a spell on Ranty for some reason. I just saw that in chat. I don't know what.
Yeah,
the spell
that was a fake Arwen.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
So why have you banished Arwen?
Me personally, I've got Arwen blocked because at this moment I don't want to associate with him because he won't change his position with regards to this perception that he has to do with gravity. He thinks that gravity is a real thing, like some people seem to. But when push comes to shove, rather than drop the word force at the end of his downward acceleration, he then described it as an upward acceleration effect. And then when we were asking for what the cause was, which I wasn't even asking, other people were, he got all shirty about it and rage quit. And that I wasn't even in the hangout. But the point is, if you're going to claim there's an effect, then you've got to be able to show what the force is, which is the baller's position. If they claim gravity, they've got to show what the cause is. And they can't distinguish gravity from density. It's that simple. But Arwen doesn't like it because he seems to not want to agree with me or change his position. So he found a middle ground that was neither one nor the other. And so, but then he then effectively became the Flat Earth Society pin cushion because the minute he said an upwards acceleration, that rang alarm bells.
Surely, and it's very sad that you have to, just because a friend disagrees with you, you banish him from your standpoint, you banish him from the chat. I don't think
the other argument to that is why don't you call Arwen out when he talks nonsense if you don't agree with gravity? So which way do you want it? Should I be calling out a flat earther that I think's talking rubbish? Or should I be inviting him onto the show and putting my arm around him and you lot criticise me for not calling him out?
No, but you've obviously called him out quite publicly, and that's fair enough. And you both disagree on a certain point, and that's fair enough. But you shouldn't be banished from it.
He isn't banished, but at this moment, I don't want to associate with Arwen because I want to be contrasted against Arwen. And until people realise that I am not with him on this claim of gravity, then I'm all right with him not coming in. I'm happy to keep him blocked for that reason.
I think that I'm quite clear.
Riley, I think people know you're not with Arwen on this point. I think that's been established.
So I don't see why he's banished.
Because he gets really personal, he gets uptight when people call him out and stuff, and unless you agree with him, he spits his dummy out and has a rage quit and really gets hysterical, and there's no need.
And
Free Arwen Robinson.
One thing you guys don't understand as well is that behind the scenes things go on too, and you don't realise what it can be like off air. So we do.
Fair point. Fair point. I don't know what sort goes on off air, but
I think this is about a disclaimer. If you have a claim, different opinion than the group or whatever you are, you gotta throw a disclaimer like, "Hey, this is what I believe. This is what I feel. This is my research and led me to, and this is what some people is missing." And I include Arwen in that. Not throwing a disclaimer in what he said.
I disagree. I think he's made that quite clear that this is his belief, and he's argued his case. And if you disagree with him, that's what you disagree with, and it's fair enough. But you don't have to agree on everything. But I just think it's a bit sad that he's out there, really.
Yeah, but there are other tactical reasons. I mean, he interrupts everybody all the time. He never goes on mute, and literally he sat with his microphone right in his lips, and you can hear him popping all the time, which means that he's sat on the edge of his seat, and he doesn't let other people have a turn.
I do think that's a fair point, Anthony.
No, but I see that as a minor point, but it is an additional point. And the other thing is, I invited Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole in and demarbling on a particular hangout for Nathan's benefit, which Nathan knew nothing about at the time. But Arwen bloody attacked them both, and they were guests.
Yeah, I do understand what you're saying about his behaviour sometimes.
Yeah, there's a panel of people that all want to talk, and you'll notice that I go on mute for long periods. You'll notice that other people go on mute for long periods. Arwen's never ever on mute. He never gives way to anybody, and that tactically is not good. Look how the show flows right now.
Can I just say something, just because I don't want the stick I'm getting in the chat. So, right, I am going to demand, Anthony, that you unblock Arwen now. What do you say to that?
I've got three things. I could do what Mark Doxey did yesterday or the day before and sit there and say absolutely nothing. I could swear and I could say F off, or I could do it to be polite. But
Okay,
hold on.
I'll rephrase it. Do I have any control whatsoever over you blocking or unblocking anybody?
None at all.
Yes, master.
Bastard. Unreal.
No, you don't.
My point, whether or not Anthony backs me up or not, is I've got absolutely sod all control over who blocks who. None. So people like Lenny Harry saying, you shouldn't allow this to I've got no control. Sorry, it's not me allowing this. I can't control what other people do.
Well, just bear in mind that part of why I'm doing it is because the show does flow better. When the show's like this, we do get movement on topics. People do get into arguments and it gets heated. Look at yesterday; it was a really good show. The shows are different when Arwen's not on, and the tension's not there because everyone's scared to speak against Arwen in case he gets upset.
But we can't say that Arwen hasn't contributed, though.
He does, and there are benefits to him being here. He helps with the backdoor patrols, and he can be polite. He can be a gentleman at times.
I will agree, though, and Arwen's my dude, but he does flip out a little bit on you, which I don't really like, because we're all pretty much on the same side. So, like, I don't really like when people are flipping out on other people.
I think Arwen's on his own side. That's the thing. He's all for himself. That's the issue. It's like where us guys are all pretty close, and we like to work together. Arwen's definitely one of he's in it for himself, and he wants his beliefs to supersede everyone else's, and he doesn't care. He wants his what is it? What kind of model is it that he's got, Anthony? I can't even remember it.
Rectangular looping model. Yeah,
that nonsense. He wants that to be the forefront of everything, and we should believe it, and we should look into that, and we can't have a debate about the sun or the sunset or anything without him jumping in on this nonsense.
You could say the same about Pete Shea, but there you
go. That's why Pete Shea doesn't always come in, though.
Thankfully.
I mean, listen, it's not totally personal against Arwen from my perspective. Some of it is tactical because other people do want to speak, and he doesn't give way. That is a big thing.
I agree with you on that, Anthony. I think he does jump in like I've just done then. But yeah, I think he does jump in a lot.
Anyway.
Arwen, just to answer your question, yeah, you do have a point. I guess I would flip out a little bit if I was being targeted and blocked, but I don't know. I don't really see it as being like that, but I mean, I'm not you, so...
Well, I see it as this way, like,
and besides that, like, you and Riley have been going back and forth for a while, even way before this particular argument. Like, you guys have always kind of gone back and forth, even though you guys are both flat earthers. You don't agree on a whole lot, so I think that's part of the problem. Maybe it's just like sometimes personalities don't mesh.
Well, what we found was that we were doing presentations and getting points to a conclusion, or we'd have a Glober that would be in the debates, and we would have him pinned down to a certain point. Just when we were about to sort of like lay the hammer down on the guy and get the final win, Arwen came in and saved them, and it was on cue.
Let me add to that. Let me add to that. One thing that Arwen hasn't got in his head, right? He doesn't stick with the conversation, right? What happens is you build up to a point and people start you can hear that the tones start rising and the volumes get louder, and it gets to the crescendo of a point, right? The pinnacle of the point, and there needs to be that pause. That pause has to be there. And the minute that pause starts, Arwen pipes up because he wants to make his next point, and then the point's totally lost.
I was going to say, it could be probably a cultural thing. I mean, this is what we expect, this kind of, when we're kind of holding the toes, and, we expect Arwen to kind of realize. So I think maybe it's probably a cultural thing where he just has to jump in and say what he has to say. But yeah, I mean, it's right. When we are making a point, especially in this, this time when we're being ridiculed left, right, and center, and we're making a good point, it's key that our good points are heard. And, there's a time and a place to say, an opinion that contradicts that. But I think it probably is just, he doesn't get it. He's thinking probably, why are you guys like this? But this is what we're trying to explain, that, this is how discussion happens. It's not just jumping over when you feel like you have a point. So, it's kind of a mixture here. Yeah?
He's in the chat right now. Why don't like we let him on and like let's talk to him about it.
I'm happy to.
I'm not planning on keeping him blocked indefinitely. For the minute, I just think that we would all benefit if he did have a break.
I mean, if we did that, the rest of the show would be interpersonal communication, and I don't think that that's what this show's about. I mean,
Yeah,
we're already talking about someone who's not present, which I don't think is necessarily fair,
I
and
totally
that's
agree.
taken up 20 minutes.
I agree completely.
But the question was asked, and now the answer's out there, and I guess we can put it to bed. It's been addressed. So, where were we, Jimmy?
What, after the show yesterday,
Yeah,
when you booted me off,
but I booted you off because you were being an idiot after the hangout.
I think you were being very rude to me, to be honest. But
Because I was losing my temper with you and my patience.
I didn't lose my patience with you.
I don't care. You actually were. You were riling me up on purpose for no good reason.
I wasn't riling you up. Right, there you go.
Right, so let's go back to where we finished off yesterday then.
Well, hang on. Can't we go to a conclusion with the GeoStreamer? Has anybody in the chat had a response back from GeoStreamer's the question that we put to him?
I haven't seen a response from GeoStreamer. I'm just checking.
I haven't had one either.
No, there's no response from GeoStreamer, so we'll have to give it a bit more time.
Well, to be fair, you first put the point to him, what, 5-6 hours ago? So
Yeah, 4 hours ago I messaged him. So shout outs to Ian Matheson, who's been over, Rob Wiggles, that's been over, Goddess Witch Bella, and Suzanne Dawson. We could do with a couple more people so that he gets the notified ringing tone on his phone. So GeoStreamer's channel, the video that's quoted or titled "Angle Sizes and Measurements, Angular Size is a Sum," and it's dated September 2017, 6 months ago. So if you could get people to go over there and just ask the question, was somebody feeding you in the background? That would be really good. And the minute he responds, then I'll show you what we've got on him.
And also, just one other thing, there's a fake ranty flat Earth in the chat that's actually saying stuff. So if you click the 3 little buttons to the right, you'll know by going to the channel to see whether or not it is actually me or not.
Well, normally Nathan blocks them channels.
Oh right, okay.
For imitation.
Well, he's in there saying stuff. I've not really been keeping track of what he's been saying, but I'm sure it hasn't been too good.
And Rasta Hat, you can go to your room. So anyway, Jimmy. Venus, the assumption that it was the same size as the Earth.
Not really where we finished up, but there you go.
Well, I'm just leading back to the point where we finished up so that it was something we could jog each other's memory with.
So for the audience, you basically read one line and then extrapolated that across this whole working method. But come on.
I read the whole paragraph in context. What are you talking
about? Paragraph, is that just one? Is that the only thing that mentions this guy across the whole of the
All right, so let's bring it back up again, because if you're claiming that I cherry-picked one line out of this paragraph, then that's a complete misrepresentation. I'm going to call you on it.
I'm saying yours is a misrepresentation.
How?
I'm not saying it's not true, but it's a very glib interpretation of his body of work.
What do you mean? Explain.
You're basically picking someone else's words about this guy from 1672, and that's saying his whole scientific method summed up in one sentence where he guessed it.
But I don't get your point. What is your point? I don't understand why this is an issue for you to argue against me.
I'm not. I'm just standing. This is what we discussed yesterday.
Nathan, are you presenting my screen?
I wasn't, but I can.
If you wouldn't mind.
Just for the meantime, I put a screenshot that I took of a second article from space.com, and I highlighted a particular point. I disagree with you, Jimmy. I read the article that Riley's referring to. I read a second article. Both articles clearly say these guys are guessing, and they did a great job because guess what? They were right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying that's not true. That's the whole point. But it's just you're saying the word guessing, and that's like it's just gone. Oh yeah, it's, as we said yesterday, plucked out of his arse or something like that.
Can you differentiate between guessing and assuming?
Not really.
Right. So it says in the article I cited yesterday. So I'm on screen now, and this is dated. This is a journal from 1985, but it's quoting. This is copying. I believe the way this is written, it seems to be a copy of something that was from the time. But it says basically, In 1656, Huygens living in Paris had determined this. No, not that bit. It's this bit. Huygens wanted to give the sizes of these objects relative to the size of the Earth. He knew the relative distances of the planets, but in order to convert his angular measurements into Earth diameters, he needed to find the distance from the Earth to the Sun in Earth diameters. Huygens solved this problem with an assumption. So what's the difference between an assumption and a guess?
Guess it's something that you plucked out of your ass. Assumption is based on a body of work.
Really? Can I have a citation for that?
No,
Let's Google the word assumption.
please do.
Jimmy, I would say you're describing an inference.
Jimmy,
Okay,
do you want to read what it says in highlighted in blue, please?
I would just say this real quick, that you are inferring. When you infer something, you have evidence to draw a conclusion, like making a deduction. But when you're assuming, I don't believe you have anything that you are working off of outside of ideas and concepts that aren't substantial.
But these are just someone else's words that describing his scientific method.
Right, but you
So
described
hold
the
on,
assumption
whoa. What do you mean his scientific method?
However, he came to the guess, the assumption, the inference. This is just one sentence, and you're using it as like, yeah, he basically put the figures out of his arse.
But hang on, you were the one that expressed that term, not us. That was your term.
Well,
Now,
maybe-
can you read what the definition of assumption states on screen, please?
For me to read it, sorry.
Yes, please.
A thing that is accepted as true or as certain to happen without proof.
Right. So how's that any different to a guess? Should we get the definition of guess?
Please do.
So, Jimmy, the thing that we're dealing with is we have to deal with hearsay. We have to deal with secondary and tertiary issues because there's
Exactly.
no primary source.
Jimmy, can you read the message in blue, please?
Estimate or conclude something without sufficient information to be sure of being correct.
What's the difference between guessing, plucking something out your ass, and
That's not the point, guys. That's not the point. I'm saying you're taking one instance of where it's mentioned his name and what he did, and then just saying he basically just went, oh, it's probably the same as the Earth, so it's 12,000, whatever.
Well, I could cite.
But that's what he did.
Hold on.
I can cite
well said,
Travis's if
Chocolate.
you're
Hold
not
on,
happy with
Anthony.
one.
Hold on. You're defying the facts. So are you saying that's not what happened, Jimmy?
I'm not saying. I'm just saying you shouldn't. What I'm saying, you guys shouldn't take one instance of someone saying guessing as this was what he did. I'm not saying
Jimmy.
what he did. I'm just
Jimmy,
saying.
So
Jimmy,
hold on,
the
hold
whole
on, Chocolate,
the whole
hold on.
conversation was on who or how did he figure out the distance to the sun. So if that one sentence is telling you, in essence, how he did that, what is the problem?
I have no problem with it. You're the guys wanting to bring it up.
So you don't have a problem with an outright assumption about your religious faith in the distance to the sun? You're cool with that?
Yeah, and he worked out, and the next guy
No, he didn't. How many times do we have to say he guessed, he made an assumption, for you to tell us that he worked it out? He didn't. He plucked it out his arse.
Okay.
It's not okay. We want you to say that's a big problem because my belief is that the sun is 93 million miles away, and that belief is based on something some guy plucked out his arse. If that was my belief, I'd have a big problem with it, and we want to know why you don't.
Because I don't think he plucked it out of his arse.
It says it. That's the words that it says. It says he assumed the value of Venus was the same as a presupposed spherical Earth value. That's what it says.
What is the difference between Venus and Earth?
One's a light in the sky, one is a light in the sky, and one is terra firma where I stand. Can you not tell the difference between a light in the sky and where your feet are?
Yeah, I can.
Right, well he couldn't because he assumed that they were the same.
And what's the difference?
Therefore you have your distance to the sun.
Well, the difference is that one is without proof, right? So he's made the assumption by definition without any proof, and you just accept it and don't seem to see an issue with it.
We're talking about something that happened, 400 years ago?
Right, so have you got anything to counter it that's more recent that states how they measured the distance or the size of any of the celestial bodies?
Sorry, I'm really sorry to interject so much. Why would you ask him to counter it? It's his citation.
You asked me for 3 names of people who did the sun. I gave you one name, and you've gone down this little merry path.
It's your citation, dude.
Yeah,
I'm just saying
because
you
the
asked me for 3 names.
citation you gave, Jimmy.
Let me correct that.
Hold on. The citation you gave said that it was based on an assumption that Venus, a light in the sky, was the same spherical diameter as Earth. That's what the assumption's based on.
Nathan, let me just correct it, right? He gave 2 names. One was Cassini, who is in the document. He gave Huygens, who was also in the document. And then the third thing that he said was many other people since. So I'm cited 2 of the 3, and I'm now asking you to go back and tell me where it's been superseded.
It's in that document, that one I sent you.
You're mumbling.
Thank you.
The one you sent me. Where did you send it?
We talked about it, space.com. You said you struggled to find it searching Google.
Yeah, I asked you, could you demonstrate how you found the name Huygens?
Yeah, and I showed you.
No, you showed me a document from space.com, but I asked you, what did you specifically do? Because I could never find who actually did it, and I looked and looked and looked, and I relied on somebody telling me the name. So I want to know where you got the name from and how you got it. Talk me through it. I'll do it now.
Can't account for your lack of Google skills.
Right, so what did you... I'll do it right now on screen, Nathan. Can you present me again? So we'll do it. So we'll test it. What did you do to find his name?
Let's see if I can type it in and find it. Who measured the sun history? There you go. So I typed in, again, who measured the distance to the sun, and then history at the end. And the first one I came to was space.com. And it talked about, I think...
Aristarchus?
Yeah.
Shout out to Pete Shea.
150 BC or something like that.
So, according to this document, it says, historically, the first person to measure the distance to the sun was Greek astronomer Aristarchus. Now, you didn't cite Aristarchus yesterday. You cited Cassini and Huygens.
Mm-hmm.
So you haven't got to Cassini or Huygens from this point.
I don't understand what you're saying, Anthony.
What he's asking
you cited yesterday Cassini and Huygens.
Hold on, let me just clarify for him. He's asking you where you found that name, specifically that name, and what you typed to get it. Now, you've said exactly the same as yesterday. I think he just wants you to show him in this document from SpaceX or wherever it's from, where you got that name. That's all he's asking.
You can look down the page, there's a video of a sun, and then just below that it says Huygens, sorry.
Do you mean
that space.com article is
the
screenshot that I took?
Hang on.
I highlight.
Hang on. I'm just trying to follow what he said, and I'm just re-say that.
Say here, the document in 1653, astronomer Christian Huygens calculated the distance from Earth to the Sun. He used the phases of Venus to find the angles in a Venus-Earth-Sun triangle.
Right. Can you show me how you got to that name, please? That's what I'm asking.
I don't know. I typed in what I've just told you. Went to the first link, space.com.
Right. So I've typed in what you just told me. You measured the distance to the sun, history. And the first link I get is Aristarchus. That's not Huygens or Cassini. So what I'm asking you is, where did you get that information, please?
You go further down the page on space.com.
Right, I've got an astronomy one.
No, Anthony, you're not hearing him. So click on the space.com, the top link. Click on it.
This one here?
No, the top one.
Oh, right. So open up this link and then it's
Yes.
further down the page.
Yeah.
That's how I found it yesterday.
So find on this page and we'll look for Cassini. Cassini should come up. Now, what about Huygens? Let me see how you spell Huygens.
So there's a video.
Hang on, let me see how you spell Huygens. Huygen. Huygen. So finding the distance. Astronomy. Right, now in this document, let me just make this bigger so everybody can see it. Let's read what it actually says. Christian Huygens calculated the distance from the Earth to the Sun. He used the phases of Venus to find the angles in a Venus to Earth to Sun triangle. For example, guess it. Right, there we go. So guessing correctly by chance the size of Venus, Huygens was able to determine the distance from Venus to Earth. And knowing that distance plus the angles made by the triangle, he was able to measure the distance to the sun.
So his whole calculation is completed with a guess.
So if this is where you got the name from, Again, I asked the question, don't you think that guessing the distance or the size of Venus is a problem for you to cite against us for the distance of the sun?
No, you asked. The initial thing was you asked me for 3 names.
D Marble asked you for names for the people that measured the distance to the sun. You cited
I
Huygens
3
and
names. It's gone down this merry-go-round of nonsense.
Yeah, but the problem is you've cited it based on a guess, and you don't seem to think that's an issue, and I do.
That's your problem.
No, it's not my problem. It's your problem because it's based on a guess, mate.
Yeah, but Jimmy, you don't see the problem is that when D Marvel asked you that, you didn't know those names offhand, right? So
No, I
you had
didn't,
to
no.
Google it. Yeah, so you had to look it up. So now we're looking it up, and we're testing what you brought up. I mean, and it's clearly saying in numerous articles that it was a guess, it was an assumption.
So
how do you not see a problem with that?
He just mentioned just before that he calculated the distance from the Earth to the Sun. He used the phases of Venus to find the angles in a Venus-Earth-Sun triangle.
Yeah,
it's not like he was just holding his head going,
Your previous criticism was that we were just relying on one document, but now we've got a second document that states that he guessed it, and the first one was based on an assumption. And again, I ask you the question, I think that's a little bit disingenuous because it's a guess. My question, or D Marvel's question, is how do they know? Not calculate. No, that means who measured it, when did they do it, and by what method? And the method turns out to be a guess.
20 years later, Anthony, 20 years later, Giovanni Cassani used a method involving parallax or angular difference to find the distance to Mars, and at the same time figure out the distance to the Sun.
Parallax. Right, citation, please.
This method is more scientific. He usually gets the credit.
Right, citation, please.
Get the credit.
Citation, please.
It's the one, the paragraph below it. Jesus Christ.
So in 1672, he used a method involving parallax or angular difference to find the distance to Mars. How would Cassini use a parallax method or angular difference to find the distance? But this is subject to the guess that was made for Venus.
Correct. Exactly, yeah. Everything that follows on. Everything that follows on is from the working out that Venus. I guess.
No, he didn't. I actually read that he didn't actually use Huygens' method at all.
He doesn't need to because he already has a measurement now.
That's completely wrong. Look, let me read it again from this paragraph. It says, when one averages the results obtained from Venus with those obtained from Mars, one replaces the assumption that both planets are of the same size as Earth with another assumption that Earth is a size that is the average of the sizes of Venus and Mars. This is the only assumption that Huygens described explicitly. He noted that it is harmonious for Earth, having a place between the places of Venus and Mars, to have a size that is between the sizes of Venus and Mars. It sounds plausible to our modern ears, just the sort of assumption that a present-day astrophysicist like Neil deGrasse Tyson would make. It must have been a bold step for a 17th century scientist, however. I wonder why there would be a difference back then if there wasn't mainstream media. But anyway, it goes on further. It says... here we go. Bear with me, let me find it. Right, so 14 years later, Cassini in France and Richter in Cayenne measured the parallax of Mars, which is the point that we were just talking about with you, right?
Yeah.
And I said it was based on the presupposition in the first instance. Now watch what it says. And could then find the length of the astronomical unit without any assumption about the sizes of planets. So he seems to support your position at this point.
Thank you.
Cassini derived the size of the solar system and described his results in 2 papers of citations are given without any reference to Huygens.
Thank you.
Cassini's value for the astronomical unit was 11,000 diameters in the earlier paper. Since Huygens and Cassini were working in the same scientific institute, they could scarcely have been ignorant of one another's work. It says on the one hand that he didn't use it, but it seems unlikely that they were working in the same institute. So even if we accept for the sake of discussion that they didn't use this assumption, the fact that they were both working together in collusion almost suggests that they probably knew about each other's work and did so anyway.
And with that, I'm going to say first and foremost a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of the live audience for tuning in and hopefully sharing this debate. And of course, a massive thank you to all of the debating panel for making this debate possible. If you hated the show, then you know exactly what to do. But if you liked the show, maybe consider sharing it with a friend or subscribing if you've not done so already. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!